There we go. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We're going to walk through the IDHS Continuum of Care program for fiscal year 24. As many of you probably know, this is completely new funding to our community. This is a new program made possible through the newest state budget and is in line with the state's Home Illinois plan, which very much is in line with our own Continuum of Care strategy. So there's a lot of exciting elements to this. So we'll walk through the key parts of the program, how we're setting up our own competition and what the timeline and all of that will look like. So to start, here is basically some of what I just mentioned, but Home Illinois is the state of Illinois' strategic plan to also get to functional zero homelessness. With that, the fiscal year 24 state budget included significant increases for programs to address homelessness. And as part of this program, three of those, as part of the CoC program, those three programs are scattered site permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and shelter diversion. And you can see here that double was allocated for rapid rehousing. Double of what was allocated for permanent supportive housing was allocated for rapid rehousing. And then 2.5 million was allocated in the state budget for shelter diversion. So with that, the state has some of their own goals that they're trying to meet. With this funding, they want to create 2,000 units of rapid rehousing across the state. They want to create 500 new permanent supportive housing units across the state in the next fiscal year. So I think part of what's exciting about that, and we'll pull up the allocation here in a moment, is that, it's not just our community that has these additional resources, but all of the communities around us. A lot of the communities we partner with are also getting increases in funding to grow these programs. So how much did our community get? If you look here, again, you can sort of see what communities across the state got. IDHS has shared in their webinar, they used a formula basically to assess need and allocate funding. Just to make it easier here. Oh, that slide was supposed to go away, but this is what our community was allocated, as messed up as this slide is. $382,848 for scattered site permanent supportive housing, $741,858 for rapid rehousing, and $140,929 for shelter diversion. The state has their information on eligible grantees, and this is in line with a lot of different state programs. I don't think there's anything too out of the box here, but all applicants must be units of government or nonprofit organizations. And you can see and read more about this in the information that the state has put out. Here's a little bit of information about the programs themselves. So for scattered site permanent supportive housing, they are using the HUD's definition for homelessness. People who get access to or households that get access to permanent supportive housing must have someone in the household must have a disability. Coordinated entry. Coordinated entry.
I declined to kind of use your card to do that. Her phone's been off apparently for since last week.
I'm gonna just hold up here just 1 second. Oh, thanks. There we go. All right. There we go. Lost it. Coordinated entry is a requirement for permanent supportive housing. For rapid rehousing, again, we're following HUD's definition of homelessness, and coordinated entry is also a requirement for rapid rehousing. And then for shelter diversion, people have to be seeking shelter. Their households have to be seeking shelter. They have to demonstrate they're at risk of homelessness. And then looking at homeless category, HUD's definition of homelessness, categories 2, 3, or 4. Some of the eligible costs and services, and a lot of this information is available in the program guidelines that the state has made available. We've put all those in a Google Drive folder, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. The versions we have of the program guidelines are all in draft form right now, but today the state is set to release the official the official program guidelines. So you can see all of this at work. There's a little bit more of information in those guidelines. This slide was taken from a presentation where they're inviting feedback from programs. And so you see some of the questions there that will be resolved by the time they put out the final guidelines. So for scattered site permanent supportive housing, you can see here basically all of these categories with the exception of relocation assistance. And then here for rapid rehousing, very similar, except for leasing is not a category for that, or is not an eligible cost for that. And then in the shelter diversion program, moving costs, case management, housing search and placement, legal services, mental health services, outpatient health services, substance use treatment, transportation, relocation assistance, and HMIS is an eligible cost for all of these programs. So again, when you look at the program guidelines in each of those, there's a bit more information. Here's the slide that was supposed to be earlier. This is the funding that's available for our community. And just to put this in perspective, our HUD funding that goes towards mostly permanent supportive housing, but also some rapid rehousing. It's just over $400,000 a year we get from the federal government. So this funding is almost 3 times that. And so it really is a significant boost to the resources we have as a continuum of care to help move our strategies and help people get into housing quickly. So what are some of the next steps? Some information about our competition. Sorry, my screen went blank on me. All of the information needed to apply for funding can be found at our website. I want to put that here because maybe you've gotten out of the habit of going to our website to look for helpful information, but we're working to put more and more helpful information there. So if you look on our front page, there's this box on the bottom right that says grants. All the information is there. If you look under what we do, there's a grant section there. All of that will take you to all the information you need to apply for this funding. Some of the important information you'll find there. One is the Google Drive that I talked about. That Google Drive has a preview version of our letter of intent. It has all the guidelines from the state. It has the presentations that the state has made so far. It also includes our rapid rehousing community standards, which we'll talk about there in a moment. So you can find all of that. The link is there on our website. It was also sent out to the entire general membership. So you can find that information there. The letter of intent, again, there's a preview of that's in that drive. And when you go there, that'll allow you to read the entire letter of intent, which I think is important because it hits on some of the priorities we have for this funding. I'm going to take a look at a couple of those in a moment, but I think it's important for any organization applying for that funding to look at the whole thing before you start. And then the due date. There's a tight turnaround here just by nature of the deadline that the state has given us. So all letters of intent are due this Friday at 5 p.m. So we sent the announcement, the letter of intent out last Friday to make sure people had a week to be thinking about this and applying. And then that only gives our rating and ranking committee a week to work together to work to allocate those the funding before a continuum of care board meeting on July 7th. Here, so some of those things when you preview the letter of intent, here's some of what you'll find. This is a screenshot directly from the letter of intent, and these are threshold requirements for funding. All funding all programs that are permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing must use coordinated entry. There's no wiggle room there. That's a threshold requirement. All organizations applying or that receive funding, they must commit to being a coordinated entry point and have a minimum of 2 coordinated entry assessors on staff. So increasingly what we're doing with funding that flows through the CoC is that if you receive either HUD or state funding through the CoC, we're expecting you to partner with us to make sure that people can access those resources. And so we want people to be able to go to an organization or an entry point and quickly get access to coordinated entry. So it's an expectation that every organization that receives funding be a part of this coordinated entry process to assess people quickly. It really, regardless of what population you serve, if folks enter your door and need to be on coordinated entry, We want your organization to be able to provide that service instead of, sending them to 3 other organizations. Rapid rehousing programs must operate in accordance with the Heartland Continuum of Care Rapid Rehousing Community Standards. When you go to that Google Drive folder, that document is there. There's also a link to it right there in the community standards. So if you want to operate a rapid rehousing program, it's really important that you review that and understand it. Another thing that's going to be taking place in our continuum of care over the next several months is that we're going to be working together to develop community standards for permanent supportive housing, shelter, emergency shelter, and street outreach. So if your organization is applying for permanent supportive housing funding, we're expecting that your organization be a part of that process. If you're seeking diversion funding, we're expecting that your organization will be a part of helping to develop those emergency shelter standards. HMIS utilization is a threshold requirement for all programs, all projects. Of course, the one thing we always mention there, domestic violence organizations use a comparable database, so we expect that you'll do that. We also expect that you would provide monthly reports to the continuum of care. And then another threshold requirement is that organizations will participate in appropriate continuum of care task groups. One of the things that we're going to be launching here in the next couple of months is a supportive housing task group. That will be an opportunity for case managers throughout the community that are working on rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing to meet monthly to talk about that work, and for us as a continuum of care to be able to provide additional training for those staff members across the community. And then for organizations getting diversion funding, there's an expectation that there will be participation in the emergency shelter task group. And then the last 2 are just really things you have to even apply for the grant with the state. So nothing too special there. Just another couple notes that I want to mention here, just in case there's any questions. As you think about the project that you might apply for, we have goals around, the state has goals around how many rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing units they hope to create with this funding. And so there's mandates on us to create units of funding. Our hope is with the scattered site permanent supportive housing to be able to create 30 units. And with rapid rehousing, we're hoping to create 60 units. So when you fill out the letter of intent, we're wanting to see a budget. We're also wanting to see a timeline when you'll be able to hire staff, and an understanding of when you expect to start serving clients and how many you expect to serve. So that's all information that we want you to be thinking about as you prepare to complete the letter of intent. Here, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but if let's say your organization plans to apply for all 3 project types, you'll need to complete 3 different letters of intent, one for each project type.
Hey, Josh.
Yes, Penny.
So I flipped over to Heartland House website where it says that you can view the full LOI, but when I click on that link, it only shows page 1 of 8.
Okay.
And there's no way to click through.
I'll double check that and get that fixed right after this. I appreciate you making me aware of that.
Thank you, sir.
The next thing I wanted to mention here, just things that I think people might have questions about as you go through the letter of intent, really, looking at the dynamics in our community and really what we're hoping to achieve as a continuum of care. One of the things that we're hoping to see in the projects we fund is a level of flexibility. We know that, we have a lot of great organizations in our community, and a lot of them have very tight areas of focus. And so we are going to be prioritizing programs that can demonstrate a need in our community, but also are open to serving as broad a group of as broad of a group of the population as possible. So we're going to ask you to talk about the populations you'll serve, the household types you'll serve, and then as we score these projects, there is a priority towards flexible programs. What that does is it helps us in a community like ours that has significantly less funding than we need to meet the level of need. That helps us to allocate funding towards projects that can more quickly help people, no matter what the household configuration, get into housing. So that is what there's a section on people served, and that's really sort of what that's getting at. We understand that with the missions of your organization that, there might be only so much that it makes sense for your organization, but that's one of the things that we're wanting to look at as we score the projects. There's a lot here and we won't go too much into it, but when you look at the guidelines for the permanent supportive housing programs, rapid rehousing programs, and shelter diversion programs, the state has laid out performance measures and performance standards. And so one of the things we do ask in the LOI is that you review this, understand it, but also help us understand how your organization is going to, monitor performance and make sure that you're hitting some of these metrics. So here again, I won't go through all of it. A lot of this is very much aligned with HUD programs. So if your organization already gets HUD funding, you're well aware of these performance measures. The one thing I don't know that everybody's aware of, but one of the things that HUD grades our community's performance, is how we're performing on these different measures, across all of our programs. So our system performance measures on clients, increasing their level of income or cash income, those types of things. These are things that our community gets graded on each year. And so just want to make sure that this is out there for folks to think about. And it is one of the things that the letter of intent asks about as well. There's a permanent supportive housing ones. Again, I'll send you all these slides, but it's in the guidelines that the state has sent out as well. Here's the rapid rehousing ones. And then there's shelter diversion ones as well. I'll let you review those when you can pull them up on your computer and see them. So next steps, again, the letters of intent for each project, those are due by 5 p.m. on Friday, June 30th. That's this Friday, 4 days from now. We won't be accepting late LOIs. So if they come in after 5 p.m., they won't be considered for funding. After that, the Heartland Continuum of Care Ranking and Rating Subcommittee will review all the program applications, score them, and then they will make a recommendation to the Heartland Continuum of Care Board, which will meet on July 7th. And again, the reason for this tight deadline, ideally, we would be able to give everybody more time to think and work on this, but we have to have our own application into IDHS on July 10th. And then the turnaround from there is short as well. So if you find out that your organization is getting funded on July 7th, you only have 2 weeks to get the provider applications into the state by July 21st. So a lot of that is sort of out of our control, but that's why we got this information out as quick as we could on Friday. And the reason we're having this call today. That is the end of what I have. I know that's a lot of information there, but we'd be happy to entertain any questions or talk through any more of that if folks have questions.
Okay, so I have somewhat of a question. I'm assuming that we need to utilize all of the funding in order to get it into our community, correct? And I know that typically we're in competition with each other, right? Like we're all competing for the same funding, but overall we're serving the same community, different populations, but the same community. And I'm just curious if anybody has any interest in trying to coordinate our efforts so that we're not competing against each other. Nobody's taking money from anybody else, but just so that we know that we're utilizing everything available, getting into the community, and that all of the populations are getting served at the level that we have the capacity for.
I think the biggest challenge with that, Laura, is that, we have to put all this information out there to the whole community. And, there could be an organization that wants to apply that, that maybe is not as, in the circle or on the board. And so if we do that, there could be a perceived level of favoritism there that could be really problematic. So, I mean, I do think that's the rating and ranking. I mean, that's really, and I understand it may not be the best process, but especially given, where we're at timeline, this is really the best that we can do. So we certainly could, if we don't get enough applications in to use up all the funding, the rating and ranking, the Continuum of Care Board will need to address that. But I don't think pulling potential folks that are interested together is probably a way forward that we can do.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Josh, will you talk a little bit more about shelter diversion?
Yeah, what do you, maybe. I think we did a diversion training, or we held a diversion training in early January with an organization called Cleveland Mediation. I know several of the organizations here had staff that participated in that. The idea is really that you build a level of resources into the front door of shelter to help people avoid entering a shelter in the first place. If there's a way to kind of mitigate what there sort of works in between homelessness prevention and actually folks entering into shelter in terms of where it fits in the system. But this would actually bring resources that, there could be an assessment as someone seeks shelter, and if possible, to help them, avoid entering shelter and end their homelessness even more quickly. That's kind of what these funds are designed to do. There are, the program guidelines sort of lay out a little bit more of what's possible there. I can try to pull up that slide again. It might help me as we think about it. So case management's a big piece of that for sure. The housing search and housing placement, I think, is a big thing, especially for folks that maybe have been evicted or have been in a situation that is less than ideal and need to find another place to relocate. And then in terms of what exactly is allowed in that relocation assistance, I'd have to dig in more into the program guidelines to speak to intelligently, about that. But that's, in terms of where it fits in the system, that's kind of where it is. And I think they're probably, as we learn more, and again, there's not a great deal yet in all of even in the program guidelines, it leaves some more to be desired in terms of, how can these different funding streams work together, right? Could shelter diversion be, kind of a quick level of resourcing that comes along somebody, and then homelessness prevention or some other funding source help to even rapid rehousing. The rapid rehousing programs allow for both short-term and long-term rapid rehousing programs, so that short-term being those 1, 2, 3 months, and then the long-term being, I think, the way the program guidelines lay it out, 4 to 24. So I'm not sure how helpful that is ultimately.
Thank you.
But that's sort of where it fits, and we are going to seek additional training so that we're prepared to provide trainings for the community on diversion moving forward too.
Josh,
Yes, ma'am.
and I know I brought this up a long time ago. I say a long time ago, but it was in one of the meetings with Dave when we were discussing some of the LIHEAP stuff. Is there any way when we're doing this that, and I don't even know how to word this right, we see a lot of people coming, or we're trying to get them. Obviously, they came off a coordinated entry, so we're trying to get them housed in our programs, and there is still massive utility arrearage out there. They either cannot get LIHEAP, or LIHEAP's closed, or LIHEAP is a month out. So that makes our utilization rates look tank, basically, because we're waiting. We're trying to find this person some form of assistance. So I think there's a disconnect, maybe, a missed connection, that we're sitting out in La La Land waiting. We're, maybe they don't fall in line with any of the prevention funds that Penny has, as far as rules or regulations, or whatever the case is. Maybe the utility bills are in another city, or I don't know. But I see this still as a major disconnect, because every one of these does not allow for that to be locked together.
Yeah.
So just a thought. I know, and I know that none of these 3 programs, but if there, it is some way to connect with another funding source, and I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think, right, like this enhances several parts of our system, but there's always going to be gaps in the need for other things too. And one of the things
That's a big gap.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking a couple of $1,000s per person,
Yeah.
it's not written into PSH. It's not written into rapid rehousing. We can't cover that. So here
Yeah.
we are, we've got a recommendation from coordinated entry. They fall in line with program policies and, you know, eligible clients. Oh yeah, by the way, I've got $2,000 in utility arrears. You guys are going to cover that, right? That is literally almost every client we have tried to house in this past year.
Yeah.
So we
Interesting.
obviously do the steps we can do, you know, but we are checking everything off the list. Okay, no lie heap. Okay, we can't do that first month's rent. Okay, we can't, you know, it doesn't fall in line with the COVID protocols for HP or HP money's gone or.
Mhm.
So that is something that I'm going to keep bringing up in all of these nice little meetings because we have to find a connect.
Yeah. That's good. As I was about to start saying there, one of the things that we're working on is putting together also a flexible housing subsidy pool, just sort of recognizing that there are, you know, different gaps in the system that really, you know, we could have enhancement in all these programs kind of as you're saying, but without some level of flexible funding to come alongside it, then, you know, we still can hit a lot of snags that cause people to wait or even miss out on housing opportunities. So that is one of the things that the strategy board has identified and one of the things we're actively pursuing right now. So
Sweet. Now you know my thoughts on it.
keep pushing on it. Absolutely. And I think, you know, to the degree as those things pop up, I think it's great. There is a kind of a homelessness prevention rent utility task group that meets monthly. So I think it's helpful for that group to know like, hey, this popped up 3 times this month.
That's where I mean, I'm not logging it, you know, but
Mhm.
I just know because I hear it across the room over there. And she's constantly asking me, well, who's got money? Who's doing this? Or who's got, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Good stuff.
I come to those meetings.
All right. Well, we won't belabor this or take up any more of your time than necessary. So we will post this recording out there. You'll have access to all the information. If you see a link that doesn't work, or, you know, as Penny let us know too, a document that's not all there, please reach out to us as quickly as you can, and we'll help remedy those things as well. But appreciate you all taking time today. We look forward to talking to you more. If we can sort of be of assistance as you go through this process and more of the technical aspects, we're happy to do that. So just let us know. Thank you all, and everybody have a good day.